Hello my Solana fam, this is a tutorial on Tulip, a yield aggregation homestead built on Solana. I'm going to show you how to make gains through yield farming and lending and how to really utilize this DeFi platform. Let's get started. Let's look at Tulip in comparison to a lot of other DeFi projects built on Solana. So it currently ranks as the number 7th biggest project built on Solana. It has a total value locked of $793 million. That's amazing. And it also has really steady organic growth since its inception. So we've entered the app, and before I get started, I just want to let you know that Solfarm is known as the Tulip protocol. So if you're doing some Googling and you're like, what is Solfarm? What is Tulip protocol? They're both the same thing, just so there's no confusion there. So there are 3 main features in their navigation: vaults, lending, and leveraged yield farming. And I'm going to be going through all features. So if you want to skip ahead to one of those features, you can check the timestamps below. You can also filter by platform. Orca, Radium, and Saber, they are exchanges built on the Solana network. And if you have LP tokens in these exchanges, then you can supply these LP tokens to a leveraged farm or a vault. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so we're going to start with vaults. So what is a vault? A vault is a way that you can basically earn on your LP tokens. And what are LP tokens? LP tokens are where you supply liquidity through a decentralized exchange, and in return you get given these LP tokens, which you can then supply to the vault, and the vault will auto compound these LP tokens for you. So I'm going to show you how to supply your liquidity tokens to one of these vaults, but before I do, make sure you understand the risks that come along with supplying liquidity. If you don't know what impermanent loss is, I highly recommend pausing this video, go Googling what impermanent loss is, and understanding the risks that comes along with supplying liquidity to any decentralized exchange. You can, if you're not careful, you can lose a lot of money if you don't know what you're doing. Okay, so as I said, you can filter by platform. So if you have liquidity tokens on Saber, you can supply to one of these vaults. If you have liquidity tokens on Ray, you can supply to any of these vaults, Orca, whatever. So just make sure that you have the liquidity tokens on the specific exchange before you provide it to the vault. For example, I don't use Saber. If I wanted to supply liquidity to this vault, I would go to it would direct me to the Saber website, and then I would buy those coins, or if I already have those coins, I would provide the liquidity directly through the Saber protocol, and then I would be able to provide the liquidity into the vault. So Radium is actually a Solana exchange that I've used, and I'm pretty sure I already have some liquidity tokens on Radium, but I'm going to show you how you would supply your liquidity tokens to the exchange first. So for example, say I want to supply to the Atlas Ray LP vault, then I would need to make sure that I have the liquidity provided through Radium first. So we're on the Radium exchange or platform, whatever you want to call it. So say I want to supply 500 Atlas tokens and 4.18 Radium tokens. I would go supply. I have to enter my password. And then essentially, once the transaction is approved, okay, so my liquidity has been added to this pool. I have confirmation of it here on the Radium add liquidity protocol. So I'm going to go back to Tulip, and I'm going to decide what amount that I want to supply to this vault. I'm going to go 100% of my liquidity tokens, and I'm going to click deposit. It's going to confirm it, or I'm going to get the approved transaction in my wallet, and I'm going to click approve. Okay, so I've got confirmation that my LP tokens have been submitted to this vault. You can see that I have a deposited amount of about $126, and I'm earning a yearly APY of around 176.69%. Okay, so just keep in mind that there are fees associated when supplying your LP tokens to a vault. You have to pay a controller fee, a platform fee, no deposit fees or withdrawal fees, which is amazing. That's really good news. And you don't pay this on any of your supplied amount. You only pay this on what you earn. So that's also like a really good thing about this. So you really need to have your own strategy when you come into this whole providing liquidity or locking up your tokens into vaults or leverage yield farming. So obviously having, two tokens or supplying two tokens that have very similar price levels are going to have lower APYs because obviously there's less risk there. For example, supplying USDC and USDT, they have generally the same price level. That's why the APY is lower than some of the other vaults. I actually think this APY is pretty good compared to what you can get through staking and earning and lending on your USDC or USDT. So I actually think that's pretty good. But comparing that to, for example, supplying MNDE and MSOL, there's this crazy APY of 164%. That's because there's probably going to be a vast difference in price levels, and price fluctuations are really going to affect your outcome and how much money you actually make through supplying liquidity to this vault or supplying liquidity to this pair in general. So just, yeah, keep that in mind. Okay, so let's look at the lending feature on Tulip because it's by far the easiest to use and understand. It's as simple as depositing the token that you want to lend out and then earning an APY on that token. But there is two things that you need to know about using the lending feature. Firstly, your APY for lending your token out is not fixed. That means it's going to fluctuate according to the total supply or total demand of that token. So you can see here that USDC is at 17.54%. This could go up or could go down depending on the total amount that's borrowed or supplied. The second thing that you need to understand is that utilization for a pool, if it's over 95%, borrowing will be disabled. So we'll quickly find a coin that it's disabled on. So you can see Orca, the amount borrowed is way too close to the amount supplied. So borrowing is disabled on this coin. So those are the two things to keep in mind. And I'm going to show you how to supply your tokens if you want to lend out your tokens. Okay, so currently Ray has a really good APY of 38.40%. And if we go back to the Radium protocol, you can see that it's actually a lot more than the current staking, which is only at 26.73%. So I want to supply my Radium. I've already got some Radium supplied, but I'm going to supply some more. So I enter the amount that I want to supply. I'm going to go max. I'm going to deposit, and it's going to confirm in my wallet. And once I press approve, the transaction will go through and my Ray will be deposited into this lending platform. Okay, so now we're going to get into leveraged yield farming, which is where you essentially borrow funds in order to receive crazy APYs. So the APYs are insanely high. It's wild. You can get 4,939% APY on Orca and USDC. And, you know, going back to the lending protocol, that's probably why Orca was overutilized and borrowing was suspended, because people are borrowing Orca to earn on this leveraged yield farming. Okay, so there are two forms of risk when it comes to leverage yield farming. So liquidation risk and directional risk. Liquidation risk is where you are not able to maintain the required LTV ratio, resulting in a forced closure of your position to repay the loan. Any remaining collateral will be returned to you once the loan has been satisfied and the liquidation bounty has been taken out. Directional risk is based on the asset you have borrowed. For example, when Pepe supplies USDC and borrows Ray to farm in Ray USDC LP, he is effectively shorting on Ray. This is because in token lending, the borrower is required to return the exact amount of tokens to the lender. If Ray's price rises, then some of the Ray in the LP will be sold for USDC, resulting in impermanent loss. This means the borrower will have less Ray than borrowed and will therefore have to buy back at a higher price. This will affect the LTV ratio and can end up causing a liquidation if left unmanaged. Okay, so now that we understand the risks that are associated with leverage yield farming, let's go through the processes and the mechanisms of how you actually do this. So the first row is the two tokens that you want to supply. The second row is the borrowed asset and the amount of leverage you want to use. So say you have heaps of MSOL, but you don't have enough USDC. You'd pick USDC and then you'd pick the amount of leverage that you want to use. Now notice that the APY goes up when I use more leverage and it goes down when I use less leverage. That's because the more leverage, the higher the APY. Your borrowing interest is the interest that you have to pay back. That is what you owe. which is going to come out of what you gain. So you need to make sure that ratio is always like in balance, otherwise you're going to be liquidated. Thanks for watching today's video. If you liked it, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the platform overall. And yeah, I hope to see you next time.